Welcome to Season 3 of Everything is Learning.
The podcast where we question, explore, and learn on purpose.
We're here to rethink and discover what's possible because learning never stops, and neither do we.
Let's dive in. Hello! This season, we're exploring the journeys and perspectives of incredible people we've met along the way, diving into their experiences, lessons, and the passions that drive them. Today's guest is someone whose energy, creativity, and commitment to uplifting others make him a true force in the world of career transformation and digital storytelling. Welcome, Christopher Rivera.
Hello. Wait, first of all, if you can just text that to me, and then I can, I need to have that like right next to like my mirror, so like I can read that like every single
That's
day.
an affirmation.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's a part.
There's more. Ready for the rest?
There's more. Okay, here we go. He grew up in the vibrant heart of New York City, where his passion for people and purpose began to take root. After earning his degree from Alfred University, which you can kind of see in the background there, and later an MBA, Christopher dove into a career that blended mentorship, education, and innovation. With a foundation in Res Life and student affairs, he's always been about community building, and today he brings that same spirit to his work at Merit America, where he's helping reshape what upward mobility looks like for working adults across the country. But Christopher is far from just a career builder. He's a visual storyteller and a certified Canva wizard, a die-hard soccer fan, and a lover of all things creative. Whether he's in the gym exploring Rochester's local breweries or trying something new, just for the thrill of it, Christopher embodies growth, curiosity, and authenticity. He lives in Rochester, New York with his partner Jess and their two beloved German Shepherds. And if you catch him on Instagram, you'll likely see his signature mix of good vibes, great design, and the occasional gym flex.
Yeah.
From the downstate to upstate New York, and from Canva to community impact, Christopher Rivera is the kind of guest who reminds us that personal reinvention is possible and it can be joyful too. Thanks so much for being here, Christopher.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. All right, I think I'm gonna change it up a bit. So maybe I won't have it on my mirror, but I'm gonna ask my partner if she can literally read that off.
Read it out loud. Oh, yeah.
So like
Absolutely.
if there's a new person we meet, or like maybe like once every like Monday to start off the week, right? That's gonna be the way to do it. So please send that over.
We'll send it to Jess. Also, we just wrote your cover letter for you for any other job that you might have in the future, that second
there we
half.
go.
Yeah, that or like I've been meaning to change the About Me section on my LinkedIn.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
We'll send
hey.
it. We'll send
So
it.
okay, there you go.
Also, Marissa said soccer fan. I just want to correct everyone. It is football, internationally known as football.
Yeah,
Just-
tomato. I will say this, like sometimes I do get caught up with saying the soccer, especially I'm a big fan of just like the national team in general. And I do feel like when you talk about the national team to other folks from different countries, you can get a little bit under the skin if you just keep on saying United States soccer.
Yeah.
It's differentiated. Going into a World Cup year, soccer.
So then if soccer and football, let's go with, are synonymous, what do people call football, like NFL football here?
I think it's American football.
America, yeah.
Oh, it's not oblong kick a ball.
It's
Carry it down a field.
Oblong pigskin game.
There we go, right.
No, it's American
Other
football.
sport that isn't rugby.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. That's true too.
Yeah.
So
Right, so we usually start with an icebreaker question, although we've kind of already gotten into it, but we're going to do one anyway. So you've lived in New York City and now Rochester. What's one underrated thing about each city that you think people should appreciate more?
That's a good question, and I'm gonna shock people with the New York City one, and it's the abundance of nature.
okay.
Pause for dramatic effect. So I had to Google this. So like I'm not walking around with like facts about like New York City parks, but there are over 1,700 parks in New York City. So
Wow.
over 2,300 if you count like jungle gym parks,
Yeah.
facilities, all that. And it was something, going to parks is a large part of my childhood growing up. Grew up in, lower income household, Lower East Side of New York. Money wise, people think it's expensive. No, it was always expensive. So my mom, she would always take us to different parks all over the LES. That was like the one way in which we were able to do it. I live by the East River, tons of parks along the edge. My sister still, it passed on to another generation. Going to parks is the biggest thing that they do. So, I always joke around that going to Western New York was a culture shock because I saw, a lot of trees. Yeah, Western New York takes it to a whole nother level, but if you want nature, you can find it in New York City. And I think a lot of people kind of struggle sometimes with doing that because, like, yeah, they live in areas in which it is the concrete jungle. But nah, I always, that's a fun fact. I'm gonna start telling everyone you can find nature in New York City.
And
You just
not
gotta,
just Central
look
Park,
a little
right?
bit. Yes, and not just Central Park. That's exactly right. You just gotta be able to be creative, on how you go about looking for it. And yes, you need to maybe brave taking, you know, 2 trains to get there, maybe throwing a little bus, or just pay the $30 Uber, up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like that fun fact.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, you both were shocked, so and
Yeah.
then when it goes to Rochester, all right. So I don't like to call myself a foodie because I am one of those people where like I don't eat food to taste. I do it for like sustenance. It needs to work, that kind of thing. But I think Rochester is low key an underrated food city. When it comes to the diversity, if there's a food from a different culture, you can find it. There was a magazine, I can't quote it off the top of my head, so people would fact check me, but Rochester was voted the number one city for pizza recently. I'm sure you might have come across it maybe on Facebook. Google it right after this.
Is
Rochester
it
number
voted
one.
number one, or is it that we have the number one, or the highest number of pizza places per
Yeah.
capita?
It was a
Because
combination of factors. So
okay,
to be honest with you, I think that it did a lot of the heavy lifting when in the ranking.
okay,
Um, Especially with like, New York City being so low down the list. But I think when it comes to that, and then I think a lot of folks can name maybe 4 places, especially people in Rochester, of like decent pizza. So I think that skews the results a little bit. But I think if you want good food, you can find it in Rochester. I just think a lot of folks in Western New York kind of stick to like the 1 or 2 places or go off of what their friends told them or what they saw on Reddit, and then kind of default to there's nothing to eat here. There's no, all that stuff. So I think again, you just got to be creative and you got to go out of your way to find it.
given
Yeah.
that's a really lovely sentiment, but given what you just said about pizza, where's your preferred pizza place?
That's a good one. So I would say there's a spot on State Street. For some reason, I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know what it's called, but it's a New York City theme
Oh, okay.
behind it, which was a very good sign going into it. And the crispy, good amount of sauce, good cheese. Where you can like, use like the 3 finger technique, fold it. That's a good slice because I will say this, a lot of places in Rochester, a little doughy. That
Yeah.
like the crust is a whole meal in itself.
Do not hate on the doughy.
We prefer
There's
doughy pizza, but
We
I hear
okay,
you
there's
on
I'm not
Mamma
gonna
Mia's in
name
terms,
brand
yeah.
specific Rochester-based chains. I think we all know who the
Yeah.
biggest culprit is.
Oh,
Not a fan. Not a fan.
I think you might be talking about Marissa's family's favorite place.
Well, I don't know.
It,
Maybe
it
we're
rhymes with
talking about.
like Palvatores.
Oh no, yeah.
Oh
We're
no,
talking about.
no, you're
Okay,
right.
we're all in agreement.
Palvatores. It rhymes.
Um,
Also, yeah, if they
I
want to
do
sponsor
hear
us, I
you on
might,
that
if they want to sponsor Everything is Learning, I could sing a different tune. So, I'm like, this is good for us.
Christopher, you're hitting on a couple things though.
Thank you for that.
First, I was gonna tell him about Pizza Wars.
Okay.
So, my dad loves pizza, and we were already talking about American football. So we used to do when my immediate family would host Super Bowl or like the championship game, we would do Pizza Wars. So people either had to bring a pizza from a different place,
Get outta here.
or we would go and we would do like head to head. So it was kind of like almost like a racket of like who would want this one or who would want this one, and then the final two. And we would also do it for wings. So we are like quintessential pizza lovers of Rochester. So,
Blind tasting, or like is it stamped on the box where it's
well,
from?
I mean, so what we would do is we'd take the pizza out, we put it on plates, and we'd hide the boxes, but everybody knew where they were coming from. So,
Okay,
They're like
gotcha.
signature looks. So if you've had the pizza before, you
you
Oh,
know.
know. If
signature.
you know, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I will say. I mean, like there are my one qualm against like Western New York pizza, I would say in general. I've ran into two places that for some reason put the toppings underneath
Mm.
the cheese. And
That's a really Utica staple, actually, just so
there
That's
you
was
like a
know.
weird
one,
thing.
there was one New York chain. So I get like Fox's Pizza. So this sporadic Western New York chains, mainly southern tier. Never forget them. They're on my S list. Um, they put their pepperoni underneath the cheese. And Marissa knows this. There's a few things about me people should know. One, it's like, yes, I love beer underneath it. Massive vegetarian. All right. Biting into a pizza that has pepperoni hidden for some forsaken reason. They're like, we'll throw them off the set.
Surprise!
Right? It's surprise. Yeah.
Surprise pepperoni. It's like,
And it's
it's
just
so.
little things because you never expect it. You're like, oh, pizza. I'll never forget that. Just a pure shock. I'm like, I couldn't even react to it. That's how shocking it was. And those things that do that, if you, for anyone hearing this, if you put toppings underneath the cheese just to shock some poor vegetarians out there, disgrace. You should not be on any kind
Also,
of
it's called a
Or
calzone for
list.
reasons, right? Like,
No,
crust
totally hit
over
it. It's like,
and
you know
finish
what?
the job.
We need
if we're
to.
gonna hide it, like let's Legends of the Hidden Temple this thing,
Yeah,
okay?
right, for sure,
Just saying.
for sure. No, but
Yeah.
like it's that's like an infamous thing. So our neighbors are like from Utica, and they call it a tomato pie, and they
Ah.
do sauce, cheese, toppings, sauce, and then sprinkle Parmesan cheese. So in your scenario, there was cheese hiding it. For most of those places, a tomato pie, the toppings are underneath the sauce. Either way, it's an unpleasant surprise for vegetarians if they don't know what they're
Very,
getting
yeah.
themselves into.
And then I'm also saying this, maybe, this might disqualify me from having pizza opinions of any kind, but pineapple is by far up there in terms of like the most goated toppings. I
Hmm.
would say is number two, right behind the mighty broccoli,
It's
and then
oh,
pineapple is solid. So this kind of disqualifies anything I've said within the past 5 minutes regarding pizza. So, but I do want to throw that out there on a platform like this.
I can't fault you for that because you're vegetarian and you don't know good taste when it hits you in the
Yeah,
mouth.
that,
But
that, and if you combine a pineapple with a jalapeno, mm, oh my
I'm
God, and
so
hot
happy you're
honey.
so happy, but I
I,
will
I
not
should
be
do a lot
eating
of
pizza
pizza.
at
As long as
Christopher
it's
Mary's
that.
house.
I feel like you're like Dave. It's Dave Portney, right? Who does
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Portnoy.
one bite?
Barbecue. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I feel like we just had like a little sideshow.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Pizza.
The moment this session ends, I think Jess is getting a text from me that says pizza question mark. Now I know what I'm doing.
Getting to the purpose of everything is learning.
Ooh, all right.
Oh,
I want to segue into a question that I have that I'm interested in your answer. So, can you talk about a moment in your life where learning felt transformational rather than just informational?
Yeah, no, I'd say that's a very good question, and I will say this. I think it wasn't until so my background, so going to a school in Western New York was a little bit of a culture shock coming from New York City. I'm blessed that I was in a position to get my master's. And that shot me off to like my first ever big boy job, I would say, and working a residence life. So SUNY Geneseo. So when it came to learning, I would say just it's not going to be from the lens of like academia, right? In which I was learning subjects and all that. It was just learning how to be an adult receiving a paycheck for the first time. I think more importantly, how to navigate the first steps post graduation. By that time I was 2 years with, my partner, 10 years at this point. We were learning how to navigate our life together. And I think it's one of those things where like the first 2 years was extremely hard for us in terms of navigating our relationship, but also me navigating what it's like to have a job for the first time. So being able to apply work-life balance. What is that, right? No one knows this day. Um,
Correct.
and being able to deal with the failures, the mistakes that came with that. And I think being able budgeting was a large part of it, right? I think being a partner, be knowing what a 401(k) is. The 5 years that I spent in residence life, I think was very important in order for me to take those lessons and continue to where I am today. And I think still being in that college setting was very hard. And I think that's what hands-on learning, right? No matter the setting, it could be adulthood. It could be in academia in the classroom. You need to be able to have the hands-on experience, especially when you're essentially alone for the first time. Being away from family, not having the responsibilities. So I would say, like, I know it felt weird, while I was thinking about that example. Should I use adulthood as, the first 5 years as a time in which it felt like, informational? Yeah, because being able to learn hands-on, being thrown like away from the nest, it made me into like who I am. And I was not the prime example for like how like the first 5 years of grad life, first job should be.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really great to hear. I appreciate it. And as someone who also worked at SUNY Geneseo, I'm going to do a shout out to co-creating learning, and whether or not that was intentional. Living on campus,
yeah.
that's a co-creative experience with your residents.
No,
So I can
it is. I mean,
appreciate.
because you're also, and I think this is why I owe a lot to who I am, to my background in residence life, and that being like my first job, because we are tasked with being in that mentorship leadership position in which
Right.
I need to, as much as possible, make it look like I have it together. I am the beacon of light, truth, honor, and justice, right? Like
All
some
right,
kind of,
Milan.
yeah, right. I needed to portray that at all times to not just my staff, but like to residents in the halls. I always say like it's, you know, poor old me and any other person in that position, is what stands between pure anarchy and chaos in a residence hall. And parents want to see that, strong sense of leadership when they drop their children off. And then I'm like, don't worry, I got it in
Hey,
control.
it's me.
Yeah, the sheriff's in town. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, deep down inside, like I'm still trying to figure this out. Like I was 21 when I started. I'm like, I'm probably gonna be right there with them, like, doing Rangers, in the suite, things like that. But no, like I needed to learn real quick to be that person, or at least again, portray as much as possible, like who I needed to be.
That's what parenthood feels like.
Oh, there you
It really
Are
does.
you sure you want me to take this baby home? You hear it crying, right?
So fake it till you make it. That applies.
That's so
Yeah.
true.
Okay.
Would you agree,
To
Lane?
pretty much everything.
Yes, that's true.
But that's such an interesting perspective, because I feel like most people wouldn't talk about that. I feel like that's not actually a very talked about subject. Like coming out of college and like having your first big job. People are just like, "Congratulations, you got a job." And nobody really talks about like that experience as in depth as I feel like you just did. And I wish people did. I think it was more so like, hey, I got a job and people celebrate. But then did people like follow up with you? I mean, for me, it wasn't like, no one really followed up. It was just like, here's your big kid job, like, or adult job. And you're really technically looking back like a big kid. Like,
Yeah,
you
I'm,
know what
I'm
I mean?
wondering where like the manual went, right? Like the
Right.
moment the moment you get the first job, the moment you hit that age where like you are now financially responsible for yourself, right?
That's
You,
the
you, you
scary
just
one.
flip through the book and you be like, all right, which healthcare plan do I need to be on? Like the stuff like that, like you got to figure out on your own, while also
Yeah.
being able to, I always say, especially working with, the position I am now as a career coach, I think like that first job, it is going to set you off for the next job after that, or what
Right.
your career looks like, because you are beginning the basis of your skill set. your achievements, a lot of that do come from the first job. So I think a lot of that, your career is grounded in that aspect. Sure, you can pivot, you can transition. That's the whole theme of the nonprofit I worked for. That's the whole basis of my mantra. But that first step and being able to get it right after having following up with those mistakes is crucial. And you're right, it's not a dialogue that happens very, very often. When you graduate from, say, if you are in a position to get a degree, the last class isn't like adulting 101. Don't forget to file your taxes on time. By the way, your student loans will kick in much more sooner than you think. No one's
Right.
having a conversation, even with parents, right? You get all
Right.
sorts of talks, but not the here's what to do. Just figure it out. Call me if you need me, and that's it.
Right. I read a quote the other day that said, it was a child who wrote a song for a parent who was just the child was a young man who was just about to go out to adulthood, and I think had maybe he was young and he was having his first kid, I think was the premise of the song. And it was like, I just realized that this is also your first time on earth. And I
Yeah.
thought that that was like mind boggling. Like, oh, now that I'm about to become a parent, or now that I'm about to become like an official adult and graduate college, or you know what I mean? Now that that's happening, I also realize that these older people who I have looked up to for guidance and things like that, and just assume have the information, um, that like it's their first time too. And I think that that also wraps into, I don't know if you've seen Frozen 2 where Olaf starts talking about like this will all make sense when I'm older. But that one gets me. Like my kids are laughing, but my husband and I are dying hysterically because it's such a shit show.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I mean, like, like for me, and I keep on going back to like, graduating college because like that was the point for me in which I knew adulthood had like quickly settled in. For a lot of folks with, non-traditional, traditional pathways, like whether it be graduating high school and getting that first job or finding out that you're suddenly responsible for another human being. That could
Right.
be it. But once you hit that, I think everyone has that moment in their life where you look back where you're like, this is it for me now. Uh,
Right.
like actually, I'm curious, like, what did it look like for you guys in which you're like you had that moment where you're like, I need to learn how to be a full adult beginning now.
Oh, Marissa, I'm so curious about yours. I think I know what it is, but I want you to tell me.
Well, so I mean, I think I went through a couple phases because
Yeah.
I would say that there was like like current state Marissa had multiple phases, and Marissa was really boring in high school. I did not live. I just was like a compliance expert. Here's what was expected of me. This is
She
what
really
I
was.
did. I showed up.
But not
I didn't
boring.
make waves. I mean,
Yeah. It was,
the anyhow,
You were lovely.
college was really a transformational experience for me because I cried when I graduated high school. And really now looking back, I'm like, I wept out of fear, but I should have wept out of joy because it was just like going away, moving away, and moving into college was like panic mode. But the first night, and this is what I miss, like when I was listening to you talk about the transition from graduating college to adulthood, you everything like high school, college, things were built in for you to succeed. And that all goes away. That immense amount of support goes away. It disappears. And it's not because of anyone's fault. It's just like, it's harder to make friends. There aren't these like structured activities. There aren't these things. And so the moment that I like met my RA, the moment that I made my first friend, all of those things helped me feel like John Carroll is where I went, was home. And so I was able to really thrive there. And then when I moved out of campus and into my first apartment, that was my adult moment. That, and then having my first child in COVID, in a pandemic. Those I would say were the two very big transformational moments for me. But I will also offer, I think my approach to each of those scenarios, it's not that I don't go in with some panic or stress or fear. I am built. my brain works where I hope for the best but plan for the worst. But I will say, when I was doing my master's degree at RIT, there was a person who I was working in Res Life there, and I was having a one-on-one with my supervisor, and someone came in and I was talking about how to tackle this experience that I was unfamiliar with and wasn't sure what to do next. And he's like, okay, well, think about it from, you don't know how to get to the end goal, but what's the next step you would take? And so when I don't know how to do something or approach it, whether at work or in life, I do what I think I would like, get as close to the point to where you encounter the obstacle and then ask for help and resources. Because if you don't try it, like maybe you won't need any support or help and then you can do it on your own. But if you at least do the next best step, like you're a lot farther along than you would have been if you just waited because you don't know how to do the end result. And that has been really helpful when I've hit those holy crap moments. But Elena, what was it for you?
Oh, it's funny that you said that you had several, because I was going back through and I was like, oh, kindergarten was tough. And
I gotta go back that far.
I remember Marissa went to the school and had been doing like full day before I went, and I was like, what kind of impression I was very emotionally intelligent at a very, very young age. And I was like, is everyone else okay? Am I doing okay? Is my backpack look okay? Is my Barbie dress okay? Like, what's going on? Like, do I even like Barbie? I don't like Barbie. That was forced into this. Like, and I mean, I remember having these like thoughts at 5.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so like,
yes.
I was thinking about like transitions from elementary school to middle school. Like I graduated elementary school with 12 kids and then went to a middle school with how many thousand? Like 2,000, 3,000 kids?
I don't know if it was quite that many, but there were a lot.
Well, that was heyday. Like that was when the school was thriving. It's since shut down, but like that was a huge jump. And then that jump to high school, I wasn't that scared about, but I do think like traditional education jumps were big for me. I wasn't as nervous about going out on my own after college. But I think that also goes back to one question that I was thinking about asking you, Christopher, which you kind of already answered, was about, do you prefer like a more structured approach to learning or a more organic real time? And I think there's a lot of learning to be had with the hands-on approach. And I think you kind of also mentioned that too. And for me, going through my undergrad, my school did something different than other colleges don't, where first semester going into education, we were in a classroom first semester. Okay. So like we were allowed to teach like a lesson or two, unless the person that we were going in to observe allowed us to do more. But we were right in the classroom. So going into a classroom after college wasn't something that was scary for me at all. And I had a great learning experience, and it was like, I would recommend my college to everybody. Like, shout out to Le Moyne in Syracuse, New York.
Shout out to the Jesuits.
But yeah, so like going back to that, can you talk a little bit more about, do you think that structured approaches have a place in learning as well as organic and real time? So I'll like kind of switch the question to that.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a great question, like I definitely want to like answer this from like my environment, but also from what, I've seen with, like the people I do work with on a daily basis. And it's a combination of both. I think in which if a learning environment is just not, if you haven't been exposed to it, so whether it be through a parent, right? So if we keep on using, the higher education setting, if you didn't have a parent or parents who've been a part of that, or maybe you went to a school in which the resources weren't there and you didn't have too much structure and were left to your own devices, which sometimes isn't good. I think having that structure in a college setting it's good, especially from a lot of folks that don't have like that supportive background. When you can shift to a little bit more of like a hands-on learning, when you start choosing your own classes, or, start getting, an internship, or depending on what year you had your first job, things like that. It could change that learning environment, but I think having that structure, it's very, very important. I work with learners who are trying to pivot into, very hard to enter fields. So tech structure needs to be there in place before someone could start diving into, hands-on learning, because you don't know if it's for you if you don't have the structure in place, if you're obtaining certificates, things like that. So I think structure is good up to a certain point. I think, throughout the podcast, you guys always talk about being able to tailor an educational approach to how someone thinks, because there isn't a one size fits all. I think the structure can get there, but only to a certain point, because you all preached, right? Like, I think there's only so much you could do, but someone's curiosity needs to push them the rest of the way. And I think someone's curiosity can help with the, hands-on approach, but they're not going to get there without the structure in place to guide them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you both a question because we've talked a lot about higher education and we all have a background in higher education. And I wasn't really expecting to go down this route, but that's what happens with friends. So,
Yeah.
my question is, where do you, I think, I'll start with, I think that businesses have a terrible, in general, most companies have a terrible onboarding process. I feel like higher education has more work to do with the transition for people like you were talking about, Christopher, with minimal support and then
Uh-huh.
coming in and needing support. What do you believe, because you guys were more recently in higher education than I, what do you believe are areas in which higher education should improve to personalize the experience for people coming into their schools?
Marissa, I'm gonna let you tee this off.
Okay. Well, I will say there's like HEOP and AOP. Uh, the programs. So and HEOP are. Oh man, I just had it. It's like Access Opportunity Program, but that's not what it is. What does the A stand for?
That's a good question. Like, off the top of my head, I'm like, is it accessible?
Yeah,
Is it?
it
Okay.
helps people like first gen students
Yeah,
and
yeah.
people who are coming from non-traditional backgrounds or low socioeconomic backgrounds,
Hmm.
and I think that's really great. But again, it's an adult who knows higher education, and many times it's people who have graduated and went through this program themselves. So it's great that they can speak from experience, but you really need peers. Like, I'll be honest, at some point in time, I think the adult student relationship or the teacher student relationship, students kind of shut off because they don't feel as though the professor or mentor or adult can really resonate, or they don't have the relevance to the environment that they're currently in. So mentorship and like peer mentorship, I think, is going to play a critical role. And even somebody who might be 1 or 2 years older than you, but like have gone through what you're going through, because they're working at in a college setting. College students want to know what's going to make their lives easier. So who's the best professor? Who's the like ratemyprofessor.com was
Yeah.
created by college students for college students. They're going to want to know what's the best dining hall? What should I get to eat? Like, they're not really necessarily caring about like, oh, what's this aspect of physics, or which psych research should I do, or what TA. And yes, maybe once they're in the environment, but when you're first going to college, especially if you're not someone who has, like you, Christopher, like you were pointing out, support from your family as far as like going through higher education, you really need to get connected. Like, I would suggest peer connection. And I know that schools try and do that with orientation. And don't get me wrong, I love that. And I think that that's a great approach, but that's only a good approach for extroverts. I feel like introverts are very intimidated by that. And it's really hard because like they don't know what they don't know. So I don't know that there's going to be an easy fix, but I really would say um allowing for some peer mentorship and hopefully forming those relationships more organically would probably be my recommendation as far as where to start. I also think highlighting, like bringing in options. I mean, this would be in direct competition with those, but like at the high school, bringing in trades to show what other options there are. That said, higher ed institutions do thrive off of graduation rates, so you want to make sure the person who's there is there and going to be successful. So I think that there is really some merit, but there also can be like a fair balance of both, because a lot of schools do co-ops and internships, so you could bring them in early, like, hey, after your first year, if you stick down this track, this is where you could end up, and here's some options. And that would be a really good experience too for some kind of continuity and sustainment.
I think that's a perfect answer. I'm gonna follow it up. Like, you alluded to it. You both know who I am, so I'm gonna say the C word if I'm allowed to, and it's community. It is building that community. And I think the first place that's, since Marissa, I'll let you cover the higher ed. I do want to take it from like the business onboarding like standpoint. Previously I was a recruiter, so I had a hands in the onboarding experience for many of the candidates. My partner, she's a recruiter for a local nonprofit. She's in charge of onboarding. When onboarding is the responsibility of like one person or maybe two, that is when it fully just completely collapses. Because then you have the point of contact being funneled to one person. All of the communication stems from that one person, especially if a manager isn't involved, especially if coworkers aren't involved. And then you have that first day on the job, right? It's like the close you can get to like the first day of school, or like you're like, yeah, you like, I think my outfit looks good. I'm ready to do this, but you're still entirely scared of what the new year is gonna bring. And I think if new students aren't exposed to like as much people as possible, it's going to be very hard for them to determine what works for them, the type of person they could reach out to. Because if they're being exposed, the one point of contact is that like happy-go-lucky, like very super energetic person, it's going to be very hard for someone who is introverted to be like that. If that one point of contact is responsible for, getting all the new hires together and putting them in that one setting, it's still going to be very, very, very difficult for that person. So if there's a multifaceted approach, or if it is multiple people in different settings, starting off with that one-on-one with the supervisor, making sure they have a hand in the onboarding so that everything isn't being funneled to the recruiter. I think that's how folks are going to start, having a much better onboarding experience, because it is crazy to see that in 2025, onboarding still sucks. And
Still sucks.
it
I
is,
have a thought.
it's
I
crazy. It is not, it's not.
Please share your thought.
No, so I saw this video about this. It's a guy from the UK who he got to number one on TripAdvisor for a restaurant, but the restaurant didn't exist, and the whole idea was that his menu was based on moods. And I just recently watched this. I think onboarding orientation, an employee should be able to pick, like have like a various, like, oh, if you are like introverted and want a slow paced like ability to
That's not bad.
choose your adventure, pick this orientation session or onboarding session. If you want structure, like I need pilot checklist, here's what I gotta do, pick this as your onboarding route. If you want to ask a ton of questions, pair with me, happy to answer, right? Like that might be a better approach, because
Yeah.
then somebody, now unfortunately
You're
I feel like
customizing
people will
it.
be, yes, but people will ultimately like overload one person or one adventure than another, so you don't have like the balance, and someone's gonna feel put out. But like truly, if I could have picked, like, then you get the people. If you were indecisive and couldn't pick one of these options, here's where you should go.
Roll
Yeah.
the dice.
We'll pick for you. Don't
No,
care.
Roll the dice.
Yeah.
I
vote yes.
think that's great, because like, don't get me wrong, there are some folks that when they want to get onboarded, they're like, listen, I'll just do the I-9. Tell me where I can put my direct deposit information, and
Yeah, right.
I'll figure it out. Like I
Fast
think
track.
that's the yeah, it's the fast tracked option, right? And then there are some folks that want to be a part of the community. They want to meet the whole team, right? They want to meet like the who's who. They want to meet HR. They want to get like a brief overview, not a brief, probably a longer overview of the benefits, what you have to offer, etc. A whole presentation, how to do my job. Some people do want that, right? So like there's a wide variance, and it's crazy, right? Everything just ties into the learning, education standpoint. But if that one teacher, being the recruiter or onboarding specialist, is tasked with that, a bunch of people are gonna fall through the cracks. So I think it's corporate America. If it's not, important, it's gonna continue to suck. And I think as we start to see resources being divested from that beginning standpoint, with recruiters being less and less in demand, with that focus on the onboarding experience just being less important because they have a job to do, I think just workplace satisfaction in general is going to continue to suffer because everyone's always going to remember the shit first day at work. You're done with your work, partner's like, "How was your first day?" If you're telling them that it was bad, yeah, you'll be hitting the LinkedIn in about a month. Yeah.
And that costs companies a lot of money. So there's
And,
like there's some real benefit to reducing attrition and
uh-huh.
turnover. But it's often low priority, but I get it. Yeah. Hear
I
you.
don't understand that. And I didn't go through like I worked in two different companies, but a majority of my background is in education. And the way that you onboard kids to your classroom is you personalize it. You're like, "Oh, hey, like what do you listen to? Oh, you like fill in the blank. Oh, whatever." Like, and then you add it. I mean, and I know not everybody does this, but like it's about creating a personalized experience. It's about being seen. It's about being heard. And I think that if more companies actually took that approach, that attrition would be higher. I think that if they use their own workforce to onboard people in a way that could cut costs, like why I talked about this in season 1, which was a while back, but I had this whole idea of how to onboard people. And because I'm not in it in the day to day, but my husband talks about how he onboards and how his company onboards, and having talked to different people in the C-suite in different companies too, whether they're family members or friends, like, and even people who like our younger sister who had just recently got a new job, like the onboarding is such an important process for the people coming in that the fact that companies aren't even asking for feedback is ridiculous. Like, if you're in higher education, your professor gets sends out those surveys at the end. It's like, did I do a good job? And then you go to rate my professor. Why are we not doing that for onboarding?
Yeah, well, okay,
It's insane.
I couldn't stop thinking about how you were talking about onboarding for like youth, right? And say like what, let's go through 3K, pre-K, kindergarten, one, two, three. An indicator of a bad onboarding is like crying, right? Like day one and dreading having to go back. It's the same way for adults. I mean, it's a little bit frowned upon if I just started crying halfway through like my first work day because I had a terrible
But it
on.
happens.
But it works the
In
same way. And
education, it happens.
yeah, that is true. Imagine how dangerous it is for like a young child to experience such a bad onboarding the first day of school, at a new place they've never been to or a new grade. That will scar someone for life. The same way it's
And
so
obviously we don't call it onboarding, but
yeah.
but having the background in service leadership and
Uh-huh.
innovation with the higher education administration concentration that we both got, like you think about it from a different perspective sometimes, and that can really help. Like I do think that people, there's just this rigidity to it because we also work in a society that says produce, 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 like at a very, very rapid rate. Like work, work, work. That's it. Grind it out. Do it. Do it efficiently. Save us money. And you can't grow in an environment like that in a way that companies are asking people to do, whether it's from an onboarding perspective or whatever perspective it is. You can't expect people to give everything and you get like they get nothing in return. And I'm not saying that's for every business. Not saying that's for every place. But I mean, Christopher, you would know in your job, like people have to be giving some kind of feedback on why they left what they left and then why they're coming to you now or why they're making this career change. So like, what are you hearing it is something that people are leaving and then transitioning because of?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a bunch of reasons. It could be like financial. It could be not living up to potential. So say always having that interest in cyber, but just due to life circumstances, right? You've just only been focused on getting the paycheck. And it could also just be new perspective. I think when folks don't have, because of like a life's background, they've never been introduced to as simple as a job as a data analyst because they didn't know that jobs like that existed in the first place. I think stuff like that is completely wild until they came across a YouTube or had a friend in the area, like etc. And like that just perspective shift changed their entire approach. So it's all sorts of things. And I think, one of the things you're alluding to is like that perspective is entirely it's important. Even just onboarding. It looks different depending on the perspective of someone, no matter the industry that they've been in. So I think people need to take the time to have that different perspective and take the different lens to kind of help advance this a solution to something as easy as onboarding. But when it comes to my learners and the learners that I meet that come across me, it is just a matter of perspective, where they've been and where they want to go, and it's just my job to get a better sense of that.
That's really great. In fact, some of that applies to me. Like, I never knew I'm a program manager. I didn't know that that was something that existed, right? So, like, I happened to be there was like a progression that happened and a lot of luck per se. Not luck in the sense that I didn't it was warranted based on the skills I was being asked to do, but I didn't know that that was a career track. So I hear
Yeah,
you
yeah,
on
yeah,
that, but
you didn't grow up, right? Like, wait,
yeah,
maybe Marissa, I think maybe
no,
6-year-old
yeah.
you maybe wanted to be a program manager, let's be
Oh
real.
yeah.
No,
But
Marissa wanted to be the
that's,
CEO of Disney
I
of
did for a
course.
for
long
like
time. I
25
wanted to be
years.
or an Imagineer. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to go into engineering. But
Marissa
like
was 8 when she said that, by the way, the first
Oh,
time.
um
I believe that.
and then but to something that I think our listeners might posit, and I am also going to out of my own curiosity. Onboarding is not necessarily something that you can control.
Right.
And I am all about trying to get control. But there are people who have terrible onboarding
Yeah.
experiences but still thrive or like succeed
It's
where
true.
they work.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to know from the both of you, because I would consider you both very successful and maybe not necessarily in the one position you started with or the one position you're in, but you molded yourselves to be successful in an environment where the onboarding was not successful. How did you do it?
Oh, I didn't think we were gonna get that deep.
So I think a lot of what happens in our culture in the United States is that people think that people are out there desperate for jobs. And I have definitely been in that position where like I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have to pay my student loans. Like what am I going to do? I have to find a job," right? Um but I also think that there should be this perspective change. And I do think that COVID helped with this mindset change or mindset reset of like I don't have to take a job just because they give it to me. Like I can take time if I'm looking while I'm in a job to find a job that would be better suited for me. So I felt like that was a good opportunity to throw that out there, encourage people. Like you don't have to take the first job you're given if you're not in a place where you absolutely have to take it. And there are some people who do. I've also been in experiences where they did great onboarding, and after the onboarding experience, it was terrible after. And I've been in experiences where the onboarding was super haphazard, but the people were wonderful. And that made the experience for me. Not necessarily that it was organized, not necessarily that it was timely, because one
Are you thinking of
experience.
Browncroft Day Camp? Because
No, I
I
am
loved
not.
my experience there, but man, was that wild.
I'm not thinking of that one. I'm thinking of a different one. But I had a 6-hour interview process. I was there for an entire day for a position, and I loved the people. the process was weird. But I took the job because I loved the people, and it was the best job that I ever had. Besides now working for myself, but that's different. And I only
Get up
left
with your
because of
boss.
COVID. Yeah, right. I can complain to the boss if I need to. But I wouldn't have left that job had we not moved back to Rochester. I loved that job. I loved the people. I still am in consistent contact with those people. So I do think that, like, to your point, you can have a bad onboarding experience and it can be wonderful, and it can also be vice versa. But I think a lot of it comes down to what my personal goals were and if the place could help me to get to the next level. Like I am a type of person who constantly wants to level up. And I know not everybody's like that, but if a job gives me that opportunity, then that is what gets me to stay.
Purpose.
Purpose.
I never want to sugarcoat it, and like when I meet with learners, and if they're like, hey, my main motivation for seeking a career change is financial, that is good, because that is going to be the motivation that's going to start you on that journey. But what's going to keep you there is that purpose. So if you do experience a bad, first impression at a company, there was something on the dotted line, right? Whether it be right going, when you sign the letter, right, to enroll into a college, you found purpose. You imagined yourself in that college setting, playing hacky sack with in the quad, whatever the young kids are doing these days. When you're signing that offer letter, you're like, I see myself in this company. I can make a change. They want me. I can grow. You need to continuously find that purpose, and I think people get so unhappy instantly, especially with I think that's one of the biggest traits of this new generation. If there isn't a purpose, they're not about it. They're not going to just keep on being there wallowing. If that
Right.
purpose is there, you're going to tend to be there. I myself, with the first job, I was there for five years, which seems crazy looking back at it, but don't regret it, because at the end of the day, there was always a small purpose of mentorship, of leadership, that was always there. And if that purpose is not there, it gets very hard. And then you start thinking about the other things being like, and they don't pay me enough to like to do this.
Right.
And that's when it starts spiraling, it becomes a snowball effect, and then people just want to just get a whole different change. But their purpose, I always tell people, like, if that's not there, and if you're not watering it, then it's not the place for you, good onboarding or not.
Right.
That's
Marissa
really
talks
good.
a lot about how you're a visual storytelling master. What does that mean and what does that look like? I know you're really good at Canva, but like talk to me a little bit more about that. Is that a passion/purpose for you? Like tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's good. So I think I want to focus a little bit more on like the visual aspect, as this means in terms of being creative through like non-traditional means. And I think currently in this, the way I think our society is set up, yes, it could be done visually through videos, through a fire Instagram, through crazy graphics on Canva. But I think for me, it really comes more from being able to shape experience. And I think experience is how you visualize things, how you encounter it, and how you positively perceive it. And I think that's what I always like about like the visual component behind it, because it doesn't necessarily come from just graphic based and what you create. It's experience. I'm always going to draw from the fact that I am, a community builder. So I'm always going to draw upon like, how can I change how people experience things? So like, not, and in this day and age, influencing how people experience things physically, it's hard. COVID wasn't just a pure reason behind that. How we do it visually is also through here. Folks being able to experience a podcast on YouTube, seeing host faces. I think that's one way to do it. So I think, from that mindset, meet your audience where they're at is how I go about doing that. And I think that's where that visual component comes from, if that makes sense. It makes sense in here. I think being able to like articulate it is a little bit hard.
Could I just ask you to take one step further? Because
Yeah.
Christopher, this is something I really respect about you, and I think Elena will too, as someone who's
Uh,
like enjoys scavenger hunts and like goes the extra mile for people. So yesterday was May the 4th, which is Star Wars Day, and I am not somebody who likes working out, but I really would have loved to have been there for this workout. Can you please share with Elena the Star Wars workout that you did, the experience of the workout that you talked to me about? It
yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah.
seriously so great the way you
Oh my god,
explained it.
I'm about to flip out. P.S.
Unfortunately, Marissa, you are putting me in a spot. However, it is actually a great example for what I mean about like the experience,
Yes,
right?
that's
And it
exactly
does
why I'm
also happen to
asking.
combine both physical and visual aspect of it. So,
Yes.
a friend of mine, the past 2 years, we've done like Star Wars themed workouts. So in this particular case, I wanted to combine two elements of, a Jedi Knight, for example, which is like agility and then forced push. So the two elements of it was doing lateral shuffles while trying to catch tennis balls. So you lateral shuffle 5 yards, catch tennis ball, your right hand, left. Way harder, when you're actually doing it. Followed by that, you take a sled push, put 25 pounds, push it across, keep on adding 25 pounds. To almost simulate the.
Okay, I get
At
it.
the end of it, there's a medicine ball that says 30 pounds, but I think over the course of wear and tear, it's probably closer to like 28, 29 pounds, which is a certain Jedi Knight's weight.
It's
Yoda.
Yoda.
It has
Yeah.
to be Yoda.
It's
Yeah.
Yoda. So
But he thought about that.
the final component was grabbing the medicine ball and then essentially carrying it over, the same way in which he was carried over the swamps. Um, it evolved to using an actual physical lightsaber that my friend had bought, and our attempt was to deflect said tennis balls with the
Oh,
lightsaber. Again, a lot more hard than it looks like. And then through some odd reason, maybe not odd, I would say the Force, there was a parent with his child in said turf field, which kind of became another element of the Jedi Knight, in which it's very
a
frowned.
Padawan. Is it a Padawan?
I don't know, but it's very frowned upon to injure said Padawan or, maybe carry out a certain order that a Sith Lord would have you do. So I'm
Oh.
proud to say that no children were harmed in this workout. I can speak for myself. Not sure if my friend had those thoughts running in his mind, where like this is a perfect opportunity to deflect a tennis ball. But I just wanted, with physical fitness being a large part of my life, his life as well. Just wanted to kind of create that experience. I think it's a large part of what I do, which is I bring community building into every facet. So even today, Cinco de Mayo, and in the case of this recording, doing a happy hour with my sister-in-law and partner coming out of work. So like little stuff like that is like how I try to create, like that experience. If the visual element does so happen to come to it, then yes. And speaking of visual, Marissa, I did tell my workout buddy that I will try to cut out some green ears and maybe eyes so I can stick it to
On
said
the ball.
ball so that you can actually really take care of it and pretend like you are carrying Yoda. So
So wise.
it's something I do try to bring, as a community builder to every stage of my life. So whether it be with friends, whether it be with families, whether it's with my partner, whether it's with my dogs, it's something that my background going into higher education, the roles I've had, the role I currently have, something I do try to bring, but also something that I do encourage the people that I interact to take the role on. You don't have to be, a diehard community builder. You don't have to be like that experienced storyteller person. But I think, being able to take the first step and challenge yourself to be that person in your friend group, in your social circles, in your family, I think it will do a lot. And being creative and how you go about doing that is going to be a large part of it. I also do attest COVID to being a large part of that because I did have to do a lot of interactions with my family, friends virtually, whether through like happy hours, trivia, things like that. But I do want people to be able to challenge themselves to be like, hey, what does a good experience, what does me being a community builder look like in my family in those circles?
I love that. You were a community builder at my sister's wedding. That was fun.
And if I,
You brought everyone to the dance floor, Christopher.
yeah, yeah, and
Everyone. Even the 80-year-old ladies.
oh yeah, and I think that's one of those things where like you need to like know the setting, the environment. Dance and a good DJ could do it. If
Yep.
those are the elements before you, then being able to dance and have a good time is what I'll go ahead and do. I will take on that, that role,
There
that
is
me.
lore about you.
And I know Marissa definitely knows this. Like, I've made sure I've carried on that title to every single wedding I've been at since. So I will
I'm jealous.
dance. I will maybe kind of make an ass of myself, but if it means I'm having a good time and other people are having a good time,
Yes.
I'll do it. Not just 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10.
There you go. There you go.
Especially if there's an open bar.
Yeah, right. That really does help. Listen,
A
flip
little harder. I
side.
can do it, but
Um, the fact that you make something that someone like me dreads so much fun, like that would want to do that. I know that this isn't necessarily in your future forecast, but maybe down the line, if you ever opened up a gym, a facility, and you did things like that, I'd be there. Like you'd actually get me back.
yeah,
So, but I do have like, not that I want to, you know,
yeah.
change the mood of the conversation, but I am wondering, what do you do when you hit a wall, whether physically, emotionally, or professionally? Like, do you have a go-to reset button that, rejuvenates you or stimulates curiosity or fun?
I'm really excited to hear your answer because I don't have one of those and I need one. I need a reset button. So teach me, Obi-Wan.
Um, yeah, I've thought about this answer, and there's one thing that just my mind kept on going to, and it's sports.
Oh, okay.
Um, sports meant a lot to me from a very young age because like the biggest memory and connection I have to it was from my grandmother. She introduced me to pro wrestling, to baseball, basketball, everything. So it all stems from her. Um, when she wasn't around, sports became my outlet in which, if I ever felt alone, I could just sit in front of a TV and just escape into that world by watching it. Because I was never someone who really, really fully played sports. So that was always my outlet. So if I'm ever feeling like I'm in a rut, you know, maybe not in a good mental capacity, there's always sports and there's always a gym. And I think a big core reason behind that is because sports is nothing but memories. It doesn't. When I said sports, nothing but memories, you both started thinking about probably the most closest positive or maybe even negative memory you've had. And I think that's what people like, draws people to sports continuously because even if it's negative, people can be kind of masochists and be like, I want this again. I will take the losing team and I will stick with them. There is something that happened. Maybe a parent forced me to become this one fan of the team. I'm gonna keep on doing it. But we keep on coming to that because it's a nice core memory. And I think every time I have like that good positive, or even negative memory, something that just makes me feel, it always resets. And I'm again being the big sports guy I am. I have soccer, I have football, I have Formula One. That season is in full swing. It is a constant reset. And if I'm not finding that directly in front of a TV, following sports, it is going to the gym. It's being able to start off every single day just doing something positive, tiny bit positive. Even just even if I just stepped a foot into the gym and left, I still count that as a win. There's a mantra I live by. There's no such thing as a bad workout. Like nothing. So if I could have that positive feeling where I feel like I'm doing something positive, not just for my own emotionally well-being, for my physically well-being, it sets the day in motion. I feel like I could do a lot. So I'm glad I do have that outlet where I can continuously find that reset button. It's every day at 6:45 at a gym in Rochester or Sundays, Saturdays, whenever the Mets are playing, etc. Like I can find that reset button because of those memories behind it. And I think just folks just need to find that outlet in which it can do it for them. So being able to find that specific thing that is to you, where like you can consistently rely on to put yourself in that better state, and go ahead and do it. If sports is the way, then encourage anyone to hit me up, and definitely we can go ahead and do it. But yeah, I was trying to find like a cool answer,
That is a
but
cool
I
sports
think it is a
answer.
really cool
came
answer.
back. It came back to it because it is my thing, but also a thing that I'm glad I could share with other people.
I also didn't think about sports having memories, but you're absolutely right. So that was a really cool way to think about that.
There's honestly no reason why we do it. It's not what to. Sports is a very expensive hobby, whether it be going to sports, right, or buying the gear. We don't
Yep.
do it to like shell out money. It's to create the memories that go behind it. So,
I love that.
whenever I interact with, people that aren't like sports fans or things like that, totally understand. They have that thing that also creates memories. For me, it's just sports.
I love that.
For me, it's board games.
Oh,
Is that
no.
you think that's your reset? Because I do
No,
feel
it's
like
The
it
Office,
always.
but The Office
Oh.
of board
Yeah.
games. No, what? Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say I do think that we could all come to the table as a family, and you could be in a foul mood, and then all of a sudden we start playing a game, and you're like.
I
You're
like that.
you're like
Yeah,
all of a sudden like the happiest person. I don't think I
do.
ever noticed that, but it's true.
It's
It's a good
also
reset.
because it's like it happens so rarely that
Mhm.
I get enough
Yes.
undivided attention to play something, and like I'm very much looking forward. Like I already invested in a few Bluey board games for my children because I like want to get like I want to do a board game night, like get them or puzzles. I like a good puzzle and I love a good book, but it's so hard to find space for those things. And a puzzle is something that you can do with other people, but like reading, it's not. It's very personal, and I, where I can, would like to share in an experience. So food is also a good reset too. But I hate cooking and I hate cleaning, so I just like eating, and it's very rare that I can just like order something and eat. Like I have to like make space and make a budget and all that stuff. But yeah, no, board games, like if I already have it, it's free, and now you can rent them from the library, which I love.
Uh-huh.
And I also don't even mind losing. It's like the camaraderie of playing, and like euchre. I love playing euchre. I haven't played
Love
euchre in such
euchre.
a long time, and I really am
Yes.
grateful. Like Uncle Chuck taught us, and
Mhm.
euchre is not an easy game, and we
No.
learned when we were around 10 years old. So let me tell you the type of patience that it must have taken to teach 10-year-olds to play this game. But
We were
it's so fun.
camping and there was a
Wow.
lot of alcohol for the adults, so I think they were fine.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, they were
That's
placated.
the patience. It was like just down another
Oh,
bottle.
yeah.
But
But
yeah, no.
take a
What
shot for
so
every card.
I know, Elena, you said you didn't have one, but if you had to guess what one would be or what you would like if you
Yes.
had the space and time to do it, what would it be?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it while you guys have been talking because it's I love your ideas. And I see how that correlates and I see how other people can really relate to that. I think for me, my reset was always like planning a vacation or immersing myself in a different culture. Um, and I think the other one we've been talking about food, like whether I'm making food for other people and hosting, like everything stops if I'm hosting something. So going back to being a community builder, I've never heard that term in the way that it could be like outside of work. And I do love that idea. I do think that that's something that I really love. My husband and I host every holiday that the rest of the family will allow us to. Which we love hosting on a different level. I think people are like, "Oh, you're hosting again?" And we're like, "Yes, we love it. It's great." So I think and also going out to dinner and like trying a new place,
Mm.
we love that. Like it but we again, it's a time thing. All of my things like when we talk about a reset button, I go back to thinking of time. And I'm like, I don't have the automatic one, but at least now that I've had time to reflect on it, I can see that like traveling, new experiences, like we just tried a winter swan the other day. We went down, it's in the city off of East Ave, I think.
This is a restaurant?
No, so it's actually like this really cool, it's like a flower place, but and I think it's not called Winter Swan is the coffee place inside of this place, and I can't remember. It's right next to Scratch Bakery, like right to the right of it. And our kids were sleeping, and we took the baby. Our twins were sleeping, and we took the baby. And I was like, let's just go grab a cup of coffee quick in the city. So my mom was here watching the kids. I should say that. We didn't leave our kids alone sleeping. And we went there, and they had this awesome coffee, and we had never been there, and it was just such a cool thing to do. It took us like all together round trip like 35 minutes, and we just went, and it was a new experience. It was so fun. So maybe my reset button doesn't need to be like an immediate thing. It just right now, with life being so busy, which I think a lot of people can relate to, it's hard to make the time to reset, especially as an adult who has like I don't want to say, I guess, demanding responsibilities, or responsibilities that take time consistently, like being responsible for a pet, being responsible for a family member as a caretaker, being responsible for children, whatever it might look like. I think that reset button seemed elusive to me, but now, because of you both, I feel like it's not. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
That's how my brain works, everyone. You're welcome.
I also think like you make like you were talking about purpose earlier. I feel like we make time and space for things that feel purposeful to us, and like the fact that you were able to go out and try that new place, like that gave purpose to your relationship, or purpose to whatever that activity you were trying to strive for. And what I wish I could do, and I'm struggling, maybe you both have some ideas, is like eliminating things that don't bring me joy or purpose. But it's like
Marie Kondo.
I feel like I have to do it. I'm struggling there a bit. So if you have any ideas, love to
Give an
hear them.
example.
Ooh, I hate cleaning, but I know it's important. No,
Hire a
that's
maid.
a bad example. Yeah.
Hire a cleaner.
Yeah. Okay, outsource. Okay.
Outsource. Thank you. That's much better. What I said.
That's yard work. Outsource.
Yeah. Seriously, I'm learning that, like, I'm learning that outsourcing things for your mental health is actually the healthiest thing that you can do in situations where like you just don't have the time, or you just can't bring yourself to do it. Like I think creating that internal struggle, it's just not worth it anymore. Like and I think that's something else that I feel like maybe COVID gave a reset button for people, is like, what is my actual bandwidth for nonsense? Like, what's my actual bandwidth for like pushing through things? And like, do I need to slow down in life, or is this too slow? I think it reset people, and I don't think that our society would have reset in the way that it did had we not had COVID. And I don't think that it was necessarily a good thing, but I do think in bad situations, good things can come from it. So I don't know if
There's this question I had asked Marissa like a few weeks ago, and it was a question I got from an autobiography. It's a tennis professional turned comedian who's now one of the hosts on the Daily Show, and his coach, he's telling him a question. It's like, what are you focused on? Because his mantra is your life is what you focus on, and I think being able to find the things in your life that are taking up too much bandwidth because they're negative, being able to eliminate that. And I think a good example of that a lot of people can relate to is work. You get done, right, from whatever work is. Afterwards, you're thinking about how bad it is. You're putting yourself in that mindset. You're dwelling on it. You're talking to other people, etc. Focusing on how much it sucks to clean. Actually, whereas that sports is so ingrained in my podcast, like in my mind, that when you said cleaning sucks, I'm like, oh, but that's when I listen to my sports podcast.
That's actually a
Put
good
me in
point, though.
such a
Like,
I
good
love
make it
that,
fun.
yeah.
Find
I
a way to
finally
make it
have
fun.
time to listen to my sports podcast
That's a good
because I
point.
get to clean and I get
I love
to
that.
I get to.
clean.
Oh,
That
that's
was
a
the
mindset
best.
shift.
Catch up.
But that was the best parenting advice I ever received. So when we were pregnant with twins,
Mhm.
one of my husband's friends from college said, hey, listen, guys, like, strap in here. Like, no one's gonna understand having multiples except for people who had multiples. You have to use I get to change 25 diapers a day. I get to
Privilege.
clean the bottles. I get to. And we thought, like, gosh, that's such a like comedic moment, right? But it's true. Christopher, you are a genius. Like, I get to really does make a difference. Like, I get to clean the dishes at the end of the day because it means that my kids are still in my house and they're still making a mess. And the second they leave, the magic's gone. Have you guys ever heard that too? Like, someday the mess is going to be gone and with it goes the magic. I feel like every parent feels that, like, to their core. I'm going to like throw up and also cry right now because I said it out loud and that means it's getting closer. But I mean, my kids are only 3 and 10 months. So, but it just feels like it's right there.
I know, but those 3 years went by fast. Like,
So fast.
Yeah.
So fast.
I was honestly like I panic sweat when we were talking earlier about onboarding and what school, and like I'm confident that the first day is going to go really rough for my oldest who's transitioning to kindergarten, and my goal, honestly, like my best hope is just that he doesn't cry. Like, if nothing else, that he can find one thing that he laughs at and he doesn't cry. Like, he doesn't dread going back. That would be my best hope, because I understand, like, it is going to be such a tough transition. But I like what you said. I get to do this. And like, I get to make my house a clean space that my kids can like navigate and thrive in. It just, I know 5 seconds later, when my youngest sees me touching something that I have just put away, that's its immediate fascination, and all the work that I just did, I get to redo. And that is where
And we're just like, wow, I'm so glad I was able to help Miles find the thing that, was right there all along. But
right. I hear
No,
you. I hear
Marissa,
you.
do you know what though? You get to trick them into doing something like that by touching it too. I don't mean
that's
tricking your kid,
true.
but if you go, I do that all the time with the older two. I go and I'll touch their Tony box and I'll sit there and I'll like watch for them. I'll be like, are you coming? And then I go and clean.
That's
So it's like misdirection.
good. I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
Just imagine.
I'm literally going to do this right after we get off this call. No, that's amazing. But seriously, no, Christopher, I'm so glad that you get to listen to your podcast while you clean. And seriously, but outsourcing, financially, I need to find other people who the things that I like doing, they don't like doing, and then we can
So you
swap.
can swap.
Yes.
Yeah, that's $1 million idea, Marissa. It really is.
Well, I want it to be a $0 idea, so there's no exchange of money, and it just gets done.
That's
Okay? I don't
just
want to
for
be taxed on
funsies.
this, okay? All right. The government already gets too much of my money. They don't need my time too. Okay.
That's
No,
fair.
but Christopher, before, because I want to take a step before we get to the last step, which is looking ahead. I'm curious, what's something you're dreaming about personally, creatively, professionally? Where do you see yourself in however much time? It could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 years, it could be 5 decades.
yeah, no, I mean, it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I'm blessed to be in the position that I am in. Being able to change lives. That's something little old me growing up in New York City. I never thought I would be in a position to do that. I love what I do. I'm blessed to, have a supportive family, my partner, my dogs. I want to continue cultivating that. With the position that I am, continuing to help my learners. And then down the road, I think yes, I do have dreams of aspirations of taking it to a grander scale. I don't know what that looks like, but I wanna continue being on that journey because it's been a good ride, and I'm blessed to continue to be able to do it. So I wanna continue to cultivate it. Like that's, what I said before, what are you focused on? That's what I'm focused on. How can I make the most of the position I'm in and the job I'm in and the Christopher that I am to the people that love me. or I used to think loved me. Now they love me. That's my dream. It's a little bit of a cop out answer, but I'm glad like I can focus on literally that. I'm in a position where I can just keep on doing what I'm doing, but also look at ways to improve.
That's awesome.
Love that.
Lane, do you have other questions for Christopher?
I mean, a million. I feel like I've learned so much today, and I'm so excited about it. And yeah, I do. I have so many, but I feel like I would keep you on for so long.
Yeah,
Um,
bring me on next season, all right? I can't.
yeah.
I gotta save some things.
Yeah, no, we will definitely have you back. I guess so. I guess I'll ask the final question that we ask every guest, which is, what's one question you wish more people would ask you?
Yeah, you want to grab a beer and watch the game?
Aw.
Yeah, I do.
It's right.
That's totally speaks to the community, the C word you were talking
Yeah.
about earlier.
It,
Oh
it,
my
it's
gosh,
it's
so
such
cute.
it's such a quick, easy question. That I want people to have like their own like
Version.
variation of what community looks like, and like say you probably have someone in your life that you want to be like, hey, do you want to come over and just watch Instagram reels for an hour? That could be your just grab a beer and watch a sports game. Like for me, that's mine. That's how I fill my glass, so to speak. I wish I got asked that question a lot more, but the reason why it's important to me because it is that community building aspect, like you did hone in on, Marissa, and I want people to figure out like what their you want to watch the game and grab a beer question is,
I
because
love that
then
so much.
you kind of know like it's a good step in terms of how you should be able to community build. So I share sports with the people I love the most. What does that look like to you? It's like the final thing I could leave to people and just take the leap in sharing it with others.
Wow.
Yeah, the
I
reason why
know
I said
that.
Instagram Reels is because like there's about 3 hours worth of content I need to watch that Jeff has been sending me, and it's been in the back of my head. We will sometimes dedicate about 2 hours in the weekend just to catch up on her reels. It's her love language. It's something she does text me, so I think that's also what influenced
That's really
I
like
love
what I
that.
wish she would text me instead. What about you,
I love that.
man?
Thank you so much for the time, Christopher. I will try and work in where I can, grabbing a beer and watching. At least, I'm sorry we missed WrestleMania this year, but maybe next year,
And
right?
there will always be a WrestleMania. So
That's right. That's right. But thank you so much. And to our listeners, if they wanted to follow you, where can they find you?
yeah, I would say LinkedIn is primarily. So I've taken a step back from like social media in the past, like I would say 3, 4 years, which was great. But I do want to get to the point where like I can just not community build in my own small
Mhm.
sphere. I can
Okay.
continue doing that outwardly, and that's a little bit of what I was trying to hint at in
Okay.
terms of like my next steps, where it's like I'm good now. How can I cultivate it and spread the influence, if you will? I want a mission to community build the world. So I would say LinkedIn is the first step in which I want to do that because I love what I'm doing for individual learners. So if I could share that outwardly and help people, career transition and all that. So LinkedIn, Christopher A. Rivera, because you'll be shocked with how many Christopher Riveras are out there. There are way too many. And then I would say Instagram is definitely a close second. C Rivera 23. I gotta post more often, but it is a secondary social media. I do plan on being on more. So LinkedIn, Instagram. Let's see what happens next.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to our
Thank
listeners, please
you.
stay tuned for our exciting next episode. Thank you very much.
Bye, Christopher. That's a wrap for this episode of Everything is Learning. If you loved this episode, share it, subscribe, and let's keep the conversation going.
Stay curious and keep learning. We'll catch you next time.